What if the biggest battle of your life was happening silently inside your own mind? Not outside, not with people, not with money, but with your thoughts. Every day, millions of people wake up carrying invisible pressure inside them. They smile in front of others, laugh in conversations, post happy pictures online. Yet deep inside, their minds are exhausted. At night, when the world becomes quiet, the real struggle begins. The overthinking, the fear, the regrets, the endless what ifs. And slowly, the noise inside the mind becomes louder than the noise of the world itself. But what if peace was never far away? What if calmness was not something you had to search for in another city, another relationship, or another achievement? What if the calm you are looking for already exists inside you? Tonight, I want to tell you the story of a young man named David. A story about pressure, about overthinking, about emotional exhaustion. But most importantly, a story about finding peace in a world that never stops moving. And somewhere in David's journey, you may discover parts of your own story too. David was 24 years old. He lived in a crowded city filled with traffic, noise, and endless competition. Like most young people around him, he had dreams bigger than his current life. He wanted success, money, respect, a better future for his family. From the outside, everything looked completely normal. He had a decent job, a few close friends, a smartphone always filled with notifications, and social media accounts where he looked happy enough. But inside, David was slowly falling apart. Every morning, he woke up tired even after sleeping for 8 hours. Every night, his mind replayed old mistakes like a broken movie. Sometimes he would stare at the ceiling for hours, unable to sleep because of thoughts he could not control. He compared himself to everyone. Someone his age had already bought a car. Someone else was earning more money. Someone else looked happier, more successful, more confident. And slowly, without realizing it, David had turned life into a race. A race where he was always losing. The worst part was this. Nobody knew, because silent suffering is dangerous. A person can smile and still feel empty inside. One evening, after an exhausting day at work, David returned home feeling completely drained. His manager had shouted at him in front of everyone for a small mistake. The mistake was minor, but his mind made it feel huge. All evening, he kept replaying the scene in his head. Why didn't I answer properly? What must everyone think about me? What if I never become successful? What if I disappoint everyone? His thoughts became heavier and heavier. Unable to stay inside his room, David climbed to the rooftop of his apartment building. The city below him was loud. Cars honking endlessly. People talking. Music playing somewhere in the distance. Dogs barking in the streets. But strangely, in the middle of all that noise, David felt completely alone. He looked up at the night sky. For the first time in months, he allowed himself to be honest. And very quietly, almost like a whisper to himself, he said, "Why can't my mind just stay calm?" That single question changed his life forever. A few days later, David visited someone he had not met in years. His old school teacher, Mr. Kabir. Mr. Kabir was retired now and lived in a small peaceful house away from the busy streets of the city. The moment David entered the house, he noticed something unusual. Silence. Not the uncomfortable silence of loneliness, but the peaceful silence that makes your heart feel lighter. There was no television noise, no rush, No stress. Just calmness. Mr. Kabir welcomed David with a gentle smile and made tea for both of them. For a few minutes, neither of them spoke. And somehow, that silence itself felt healing. Finally, David looked at him and said, "Sir, how do I stop overthinking?" Mr. Kabir looked at him carefully. Not with judgment. Not with surprise. But with understanding. As if he already knew the pain David was carrying. He smiled softly and asked, "What exactly are you thinking about all day?" David laughed nervously. "Everything. My future, my failures, what people think about me, mistakes from the past, problems that haven't even happened yet." Mr. Kabir nodded slowly. Then he said something David would remember for the rest of his life. "You don't suffer because of life, David. You suffer because your mind never stays where your life actually is." David frowned slightly. He didn't fully understand. Mr. Kabir continued, "Your body is sitting here with me, but your mind is somewhere else. It is either trapped in yesterday or scared about tomorrow. And a mind that is never present can never feel peace." Those words hit David deeply, because for the first time, he realized something shocking. His problems were not always the real problem. Sometimes, his thoughts about the problems were hurting him more than the problems themselves. Mr. Kabir picked up a glass of water from the table and held it in his hand. "David, how heavy do you think this glass is?" David shrugged. "Maybe 200 grams. Mr. Kabir smiled. "Now tell me, if I hold this glass for 1 minute, is it a problem?" "No." "What about 1 hour?" "Your hand will hurt." "And what if I hold it for an entire day?" "You won't be able to bear it." Mr. Kabir nodded gently. The weight of the glass never changed. But the longer I held it, the heavier it became. He looked directly into David's eyes. Thoughts work the same way. If you keep holding stress, fear, regret, and worry inside your mind for too long, even small problems begin to destroy your peace. David stayed silent, because deep inside, he knew it was true. He had been carrying emotional weight for years. Old failures, past embarrassment, fear of judgment, pressure to succeed. And little by little, those invisible weights had exhausted his mind. That evening, before David left, Mr. Kabir gave him one simple task. Every day, sit quietly for 10 minutes. No phone, no music, no distractions. Just sit with yourself. David almost laughed. How can sitting quietly change anything? Mr. Kabir smiled. Because a disturbed mind fears silence. But a peaceful mind is created inside silence. David did not fully believe him. But somewhere deep inside, he wanted to. And sometimes, healing begins not when you have all the answers, but when you become tired of your own chaos. The next morning, David tried the exercise Mr. Kabir had given him. He sat alone in his room. No phone, no music, no distractions, just silence. At first, it felt easy, but within seconds, his mind started running again. What if I lose my job someday? What if I never become successful? What if people are secretly judging me? What if my future gets ruined? He opened his eyes in frustration. Only 2 minutes had passed. David realized something terrifying that morning. His mind was addicted to worry, not because he wanted pain, but because his brain had become used to living in fear. Every day, he searched for problems even when nothing was wrong. While eating breakfast, he worried about work. While working, he worried about the future. While trying to sleep, he worried about life. His body was resting sometimes, but his mind never rested. And slowly, that constant pressure was stealing his happiness from ordinary moments. One evening, David was sitting in a cafe after work when he noticed a little boy near the window. The boy was maybe 7 years old. He was smiling while watching raindrops slide down the glass. Completely lost in the moment. No stress. No overthinking. No fear about tomorrow. Just peace. David stared at him for a few seconds. Then suddenly, a strange thought entered his mind. When was the last time I felt that free? He honestly couldn't remember. Somewhere along the journey of growing up, he had forgotten how to simply live. Now every moment felt connected to pressure. Even weekends didn't feel relaxing anymore. His mind had become like a machine that never switched off. That night, David went back to Mr. Kabir. This time, he looked more frustrated than before. I tried sitting quietly, David said, but my mind became even louder. Mr. Kabir smiled softly. That means you are finally noticing the noise. David looked confused. Mr. Kabir poured tea slowly into 2 cups before speaking again. Most people are distracted all day. Phone, music, work, conversations, social media. They never sit alone with themselves long enough to notice how restless their mind really is. But silence reveals everything. David lowered his eyes. Because he knew it was true. The moment silence arrived, his thoughts attacked him. Mr. Kabir leaned back in his chair. Tell me honestly, David, how much time do you spend worrying every day? David laughed weakly. Probably all day. And how many of those worries actually happen? David became quiet. Very few. Maybe none. Mr. Kabir nodded. That is the trap of the human mind. It creates imaginary suffering. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. Those words stayed in David's mind for days, because he realized how much of his life he had wasted worrying about things that never happened. He worried before interviews, before phone calls, before meetings, before conversations. He created storms inside his mind, before life even had a chance to happen. And most of those storms were fake. A few days later, something unexpected happened. David's company announced possible layoffs. The office instantly filled with panic. Everyone started whispering. People looked scared. And immediately, David's mind began creating worst-case scenarios. What if I lose my job? What if my life gets ruined? What if I disappoint my parents? That entire day, he couldn't focus on anything. His chest felt tight. His breathing became heavier. But later that evening, while walking home, he suddenly remembered something Mr. Kabir had once told him. Fear grows when you feed it attention. David stopped walking. For the first time, instead of following his fearful thoughts, he questioned them. Has anything actually happened yet? No. Am I suffering from reality right now, or from imagination? That question hit him deeply, because at that moment, the real problem was not unemployment. The real problem was fear. Fear had dragged him into a future that did not even exist yet. David took a deep breath, and slowly, something inside him became lighter. Not perfect, not completely peaceful, but lighter. For the first time, he understood something powerful. A calm mind is not created by controlling life. It is created by controlling your attention. Whatever you focus on, grows. If you focus on fear, fear grows. If you focus on problems, problems grow. But if you focus on the present moment, peace slowly begins to grow too. From that day onward, David started changing small habits. When he drank tea, he simply drank tea. When he walked outside, he noticed the sky, the wind, the trees around him. When fear entered his mind, he stopped treating every thought like truth. And slowly, very slowly, the storm inside him started becoming quieter. But life was about to teach him an even deeper lesson. Because peace is not tested when life is easy. Peace is tested when life falls apart. And David was about to face one of the hardest moments of his life. A few weeks later, David received the call he had been fearing. His company was reducing staff, and his name was on the list. For a few seconds, he couldn't even process the words. Everything around him felt distant. The office noise faded. People's voices became blurry. His hands turned cold. After the call ended, David just sat there staring at the floor. Empty. 1,000 thoughts attacked his mind at once. What will I tell my parents? How will I survive? What if I never recover from this? By the time he reached home that evening, fear had completely taken over him. He locked his room and sat alone in darkness. And for the first time in years, he cried. Not loudly, not dramatically, just silently. The kind of crying that comes from emotional exhaustion. Because sometimes people are not tired physically. They are tired mentally. Tired of pretending to be strong. Tired of carrying pressure. Tired of fighting battles nobody sees. That night, David barely slept. His mind kept showing him images of failure. A ruined future. Disappointed parents. Friends moving ahead while he stayed behind. And slowly, he began believing that losing his job meant losing his worth. The next morning, he went to meet Mr. Kabir again. The old teacher opened the door and instantly understood something was wrong. David sat down quietly, then finally said, I lost my job. Mr. Kabir nodded calmly, but strangely, he did not look shocked or worried. Instead, he asked a simple question. David, did you lose your job? Or did you lose yourself? David looked up slowly. Mr. Kabir continued. Pain is part of life. Every human being will face loss at some point. But suffering becomes dangerous when you start believing that your situation defines your value. David stayed silent, because deep inside, that was exactly what he believed. No job meant failure. Failure meant weakness. Weakness meant worthlessness. Mr. Kabir stood up and walked toward the window. Outside, rain had started falling softly. Look at the sky, he said. Storms never stay forever. No matter how dark the clouds become, eventually the sky clears again. Then he turned toward David. But during storms, most people panic. They fight reality instead of accepting it. And the more they resist life, the more they suffer. David listened carefully. Mr. Kabir sat back down beside him. Right now, your pain is real. I understand that. But your mind is adding extra suffering. You lost a job, but your thoughts are telling you that you lost your future. You faced one difficult moment, but your mind is turning it into a disaster. David lowered his eyes, because once again, it was true. His thoughts were making the pain heavier. Mr. Kabir smiled gently. David, listen carefully. A peaceful mind is not a mind that never faces problems. A peaceful mind is a mind that does not lose itself during problems. Those words entered David's heart deeply. For the next few days, he stayed mostly alone. Not because he hated people, but because he needed time to understand himself. One evening, he went for a walk near a lake outside the city. The sun was slowly setting. The water moved calmly with the wind. And for the first time in many days, David stopped thinking about the future. He simply sat there watching the sky change colors. Orange, pink, blue. And suddenly, something strange happened. His mind became quiet. Not because his problems disappeared, but because for a few moments, he stopped fighting reality. He stopped asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and started asking, "What is life trying to teach me?" That question changed everything. Because pain often becomes a teacher. Failure teaches humility. Silence teaches awareness. Loss teaches strength. And sometimes life removes things from our hands. So we finally stop running and start listening to ourselves. David realized something important near that lake. For years, he had connected peace with achievement. He believed happiness would arrive after success, after money, after recognition, after becoming enough. But now he understood. If your mind is not peaceful today, success alone will never save you. Because an anxious mind will always find new reasons to suffer. That evening, while walking home, David noticed small things he had ignored for years. Children laughing near the road. Birds sitting on electric wires. The cool evening wind touching his face. Life had not ended. Only one chapter had ended. And slowly, very slowly, David began rebuilding himself. Not from achievement, but from awareness. But the biggest lesson of his journey was still waiting for him. Because soon, David would discover the truth that completely transformed his life forever. Days turned into weeks. David still did not have a new job. His future was uncertain. Some mornings were still difficult. Fear still visited him sometimes. But something inside him had started changing. Earlier, every negative thought controlled him. Now, he observed his thoughts instead of immediately believing them. And that small change slowly transformed his entire life. One morning, David was sitting with Mr. Kabir in the small garden outside his house. The air was cool. Birds were singing softly nearby. Mr. Kabir was watering plants quietly while David sat watching him. After a few minutes, David asked something that had been inside his heart for a long time. "Sir, will the mind ever become completely peaceful?" Mr. Kabir smiled. Then he placed the watering can down and sat beside David. "Let me tell you a story," he said. "When I was young, I used to hate storms. Whenever heavy rain came, I became anxious. I wanted the sky to become clear immediately. But one day, an old man told me something beautiful." Mr. Kabir looked toward the sky and smiled softly. He said, "Peace does not come from controlling the weather. It comes from learning how to remain calm during the storm." David listened silently, and suddenly, something clicked inside him. For years, he had been trying to control everything. People's opinions, his future, situations, outcomes. And every time life refused to obey his plans, he suffered. Mr. Kabir continued speaking slowly. "David, most people spend their entire lives chasing control. But life will never be fully controllable. People will disappoint you. Plans will fail. Unexpected pain will arrive. That is life." He paused for a moment. But peace begins the moment you stop fighting things you cannot control. Those words hit David deeply, because he realized how much energy he had wasted resisting reality. He fought the past even though it was gone. He fought uncertainty even though nobody could predict the future. He fought difficult emotions instead of understanding them. And in that endless fight, he lost his peace. That evening, David returned home with a different mindset. For the first time, he stopped trying to force happiness. Instead, he simply allowed himself to live. If sadness came, he observed it. If fear came, he breathed through it. If uncertainty appeared, he reminded himself, not everything needs to be solved today. And slowly, life became lighter. Not perfect, but lighter. A few days later, David received an invitation from an old friend to attend a small gathering. Normally, he would have avoided it. His anxious mind would have created excuses. But this time, he went. During the gathering, he noticed something surprising. Everyone was fighting hidden battles. One friend looked successful online but secretly suffered from loneliness. Another constantly smiled but struggled with anxiety. Someone else feared failure every single day. And suddenly David understood something powerful. Every human being is carrying something invisible. Nobody's life is completely perfect. The calm people are not the ones without problems. They are the ones who learned not to let problems control their mind. That realization changed the way David saw the world. He stopped comparing his life to others. Because social media only showed highlights, not struggles. People shared smiles, not sleepless nights. Achievements, not emotional pain. And comparison slowly lost its power over him. One night, while sitting alone on the rooftop again, David looked at the same city lights he once stared at during his darkest moments. But this time, he felt different. Earlier, silence scared him. Now, silence healed him. Earlier, his mind felt like a prison. Now, it felt calmer, softer, freer. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. The wind touched his face gently. And for the first time in years, David felt present. Not trapped in the past. Not afraid of tomorrow. Just here. Just alive. And in that simple moment, he discovered a truth that completely transformed his life. Peace is not found in another place. Peace is created within. Not by controlling life, but by understanding the mind. Not by escaping problems, but by learning how to stay calm inside them. And the moment David stopped chasing peace outside himself, he finally began to feel it inside himself. But life still had one final lesson to teach him. The most powerful lesson of all. Months passed. Slowly, David's life began moving forward again. He found a new job. Not perfect. Not glamorous, but peaceful enough. Earlier, he would have chased only status and money. Now, he valued something different. Mental peace. And strangely, the calmer he became, the clearer his life became too. His relationships improved. His sleep improved. Even his smile felt real again. But the biggest transformation was invisible. David no longer hated himself. For years, his own mind had been his enemy. Every mistake became self-hatred. Every failure became proof that he wasn't enough. But now, he was finally learning compassion toward himself. One evening, while walking home from work, David noticed an old homeless man sitting beside the road. The man looked tired, but strangely peaceful. People walked past him without even noticing him. But David stopped. He bought some food and sat beside the old man quietly. For a few minutes, neither of them spoke. Then the old man smiled and asked, "You look lost. What are you searching for?" David laughed softly. "A calmer life, I guess." The old man nodded slowly as if he understood immediately. Then he said something unexpected. "People search for peace the same way thirsty people search for water in a desert. They keep running faster and faster. But sometimes the thing they need most is to stop running." David became silent, because those words described his entire life. All those years, he had been chasing endlessly. More success, more approval, more achievements. He thought peace was waiting somewhere in the future, but the future kept moving further away. And so did peace. The old man looked at the busy road ahead. "Look at people," he said quietly. "Everyone is rushing. Some are chasing money. Some are chasing validation. Some are chasing perfection. But very few people learn how to simply sit peacefully with themselves." David listened carefully. The old man smiled gently. "A person who conquers the world but loses their peace, loses everything." That sentence stayed inside David's heart long after the conversation ended. That night, he walked slowly through the city. For the first time, he noticed how fast everyone moved. Cars rushing, people staring at phones, minds constantly distracted. Nobody seemed truly present. And suddenly, David realized something powerful. Modern life teaches people how to achieve, but rarely teaches them how to be calm. People know how to earn money, but not how to rest their mind. People know how to impress others, but not how to understand themselves. And because of that, millions silently suffer inside. That night, David returned to the rooftop where his journey had started. The same rooftop, the same city, the same sky, but a completely different mind. Months earlier, he had stood there feeling broken, anxious, and emotionally exhausted. Now, he stood there peacefully, not because life had become perfect, but because he had changed. He finally understood the greatest lesson of all. The mind becomes peaceful the moment you stop making your happiness dependent on everything outside you. Outside conditions will always change. Money comes and goes. People enter and leave. Success rises and falls. Life will never stay stable forever. And if your peace depends on temporary things, your peace will always remain temporary too. David closed his eyes for a moment. The cool night wind touched his face gently, and deep inside, he felt gratitude. Not for a perfect life, but for awareness. Because awareness had saved him. Awareness taught him to observe thoughts instead of drowning inside them. Awareness taught him that emotions are temporary visitors. Awareness taught him that calmness is built slowly, day by day, moment by moment. And most importantly, awareness taught him that peace was never missing. It was simply buried under noise. Fear, comparison, pressure, overthinking. Once those layers slowly disappeared, peace revealed itself naturally. That night, David sent a message to Mr. Kabir. Just 3 words. "You were right." A few minutes later, the reply came. "Peace was always inside you." David smiled, and for the first time in a very long time, his mind became completely still. Not empty, not emotionless, just peaceful. The kind of peace that does not come from the world, but from finally understanding yourself.